would you suggest that those in our community who find themselves marginalized economically take a step back from so much community involvement and focus on the personal development side?
I'll defer to Jim and then I'll respond since I just,
Well, when you say the personal side, I assume you're talking about still finance and taking care of your family and children.
Yeah, just like I'm gonna figure say going back to school and getting formal training and not being so involved in the community because I mean, we only have 24 hours in a day and there's only so much you can do with your time.
Right. Well, it would depend on the individual whether you could manage it properly. I think you definitely have to have the right balance. You have to have priorities. First things first, of course. Some people would be able to find a balance and do both. Some would not. So I think, every individual would just have to do an assessment of his or her particular situation. But, if you got children, you got to take care of your children. We're reaping the whirlwind from not having done that in a lot of cases now. So that's the first priority, take care of your children and take care of your family. And, you can't help anybody else. Dr. Claude Anderson used to talk about that all the time. He said, we're on the bottom of the pile and we're talking about we're going to help everybody else. And everybody's on top of us. So, you got to get out from under everybody else first because you can't help anybody if you haven't helped yourself first. I don't mean that, people, we just need to find the balance. Don't be selfish about it, but priorities are priorities, and reality is reality as well, You have to eat. You have to have a place to stay. You got to take care of your children. So that has to be first.
Okay. Well, let me ask this, and we're almost at the top of the hour. Got another 15 minutes, but want to ask both you brothers this. I know you have been involved in this movement for a long time, and do you, in your observation, have you noticed those of us who profess to be African-centered or conscious somewhat hiding out and using almost as an excuse the community in order to not do the things that you advocate? It's almost as if, and I've observed this from brothers and sisters from time to time, where they tend to focus on the community so much to the point that it becomes a distraction that keeps them from doing what it is they need to do for themselves.
Well,
Bob,
go ahead.
Well, I would say that would be bogus if somebody would have claimed that, Brother DJ. Let's use, for example, our counterparts or opposites. For one example, let's use people who express being devout or pious about their religious beliefs and practices. Those would be people who feel or express the same strength of feelings for their religion that those of us who are racially conscious express for our race. But those people, it's an automatic thing for them. They wouldn't think of going to church on Sunday without putting some money in the plate, in the offering. They wouldn't, and they pride themselves on either tithing or coming as close to tithing as they possibly can. Jim and I were present at an event where some folks took up some money from some not necessarily conscious black folk, and people the brother who was conducting the thing, it was Bob Law, Jim, if you remember.
Yeah.
Took a page out of the book of the preachers. And he said, we're going to, but he was influenced by the fact that he was racially conscious and he wasn't religious, right? So you remember, Jim? He said, we'll have a $50 line.
Right.
So everybody who wants to contribute $50, get in this line. And we're going to have a $20 line, and a $10 line, and a $5 line, and a $1 line. People complained because he didn't say anything about a $100 line. But you see, these were people who were accustomed to going to church. And they wanted to be seen in the line, that everybody in the room, and there were about 1,800 people in that room, knew that the people in that line were committed to give $100 to this particular effort that money was being raised for. And then the second line was a $50 line, and so on down the line. Now, those are people with a religious orientation, but they express no stronger claims to convictions about their religion than African-centered people express about our supposed commitment to racial uplift and advancement. But when it comes to putting money in the plate or contributing money to those causes that we claim to be so committed to, you know the deal. We will squeeze the buffalo off a nickel before we put it at the disposal of whatever it is that we claim that we're so committed to. So the fact that our people profess to be committed to racial righteousness, so to speak, becomes pretty much a rhetorical thing for, I think, the vast majority of us who profess that, because we don't even connect the dots when it comes to the connection between the rhetoric that we espouse about all of these great and wonderful things that we want to do for our people, and it comes time to put some money where our mouths have been, and we don't even see there as being anything wrong with our failure to come through on the money side. So back again to what I said at the outset of our discussion, for me, everything comes down to a mentality or a mindset, and whether or not we have done a thorough analysis and assessment of ourselves to see whether or not we are really genuine and sincere and committed as we claim we are with our rhetoric. Because if we did that kind of an assessment, then we would see that there's more that we need to do to give substance to what we're saying as opposed to just spouting hot air.
Okay. Now, I gotta push you again. Do you think that it is because we are poor, or is it because we are selfish, or is it a little bit of both?
Jim, I'll defer to you.
Did you read Du Bois' comment about selfishness that he discovered in his
latter years?
Yeah, latter years.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, that's profound. We're certainly not poor. I don't use that term, it comes to black people collectively. We're not poor. I think sometimes we're poor in spirit and poor in love for one another and respect for one another. But financially, we're not poor. Sure, there are many of us who are, down and out and destitute. But there's enough to make up for that if we would do things collectively and help one another. So it's not that we're poor. I think some of it is selfishness. Some of it is just the total disconnection in some cases. I mean, I know some brothers and sisters who are just totally disconnected from black folks, from their own people. And, that's part of it as well. But this whole notion of if you read my latest article on my website, blackonomics.com, it coincidentally talks about words without actions. And
exactly, that's the title of it.
Yeah, we quote a lot of people. We love to, talk about what Malcolm said and Marcus said and everybody said. But what are we doing? As Amos Wilson said in one of his books, we like to brag about black people built the pyramids. He said, what pyramids are we building? Which ones have we built?
Right.
So words without actions, just words. And we're really into the rhetoric. But I said one time in a speech that we really need to reflect on the results of our rhetoric.
Okay. Baba Mafika?
Yes, I would chime in and amen corner what Jim just said. It can't be said any particular better than that. He's absolutely right.
Okay. And so even though some of us are find ourselves in somewhat of a marginalized position economically. It comes down to us facing up to where we are individually and doing whatever needs to be done to be able to, at some point, put some substantial resources in that plate.
Well, I think, we have to understand that commitment is what we really lack. We don't like verbiage. We are the world's most consummate rhetoricians. Black folk are. Nobody can out-talk black folk or talk with more eloquence and more impact than black folk. But we have a way. I had a buddy when I was back in my younger days who prided himself on being able to rap, to sisters. He could rap up on a sister, and get her to, give it up, But this brother got so caught up in his rap that he would talk himself into it and out of it. He's so busy listening to his own rap. And I think that many of us conscious black folks do that. We get so caught up in how beautiful our rap sound and our rhetoric sounds that we talk right on past the point that we're supposed to do what the people in sales say, Jim, about calling for the sale.
That's right.
You at some point you got to call for the sale.
That's right.
And we rhetoricians, we racially conscious rhetoricians, never call for the sale. Mm. And we don't know how that piece ties together because we're so busy and so impressed with our ability and our willingness to spout beautiful rhetoric and say all the great and wonderful things that we think need to be said or we've heard other people say. And like you said, we've all read all the books and we've listened to the tapes and we know what Malcolm said and we know what Minister Farrakhan said and we can quote and recite all of that stuff. But we don't tie that with the practical dimension that someone has to pay for everything.
Right.
And the only way you can pay for things in this society is with money. So at some point, we've got to put our money where our mouth is. That's one of the things I was very pleased about what the Irritated Genie did some weeks ago, a few months ago now it is. I had asked a number of the racially conscious blacks that I know who have internet radio outlets to invite this young sister who happens to be a part of Ray Hagan's African Village out in St. Louis. She and her family were putting together a project to establish a health clinic near Cape Coast in Ghana. And the only one who responded to that, or the first one to respond, because subsequently Ray Hagans himself also responded and had the sister and her father, I believe, on his program as well. But the first person to respond was the Irritated Genie on War on the Horizons, and he had her on his program, and he put a pitch out there after she had, made her explain what she and her family were trying to do. And they raised almost $2,000, I believe, among the audience. And I believe that a good percentage of that $2,000 they raised was put on by our host here, Brother DJ, was contributed by Brother DJ. And so they were able, with that assistance from the War on the Horizon family, as urged by the Irritated Genie, to come up with enough money to actually establish that health facility over there. And that's the kind of tangible thing, you see, that we conscious blacks are not typically accustomed to doing. So there have been these kinds of breakthroughs, modest albeit right now, but we need to do more things like that, not just all in Africa, but wherever we are. That was the theory behind Jim's Blackonomic $1 Million Club, that we could actually ourselves, without anybody being hurt, or hurting themselves financially, we could provide and produce substantial amounts of revenue for selected righteous black causes all around the country, one of them at a time. And it would not cost any one of us a large amount of money. It would just take about 200,000 of us putting in $5 a piece to generate $1 million at a clip. And we could do 4 or 5 of those a year. We could have lifted ourselves out of poverty, you see, and put our own organizations that are serving the needs of our people, and in particular our children, on solid financial footing. We can do those things if we have the right mindset, the right mentality, and we did not have poverty of thought and thinking and self-perception.